welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am doing a video where I am going to review the 5-star predictions that I made in January. I chose 3 books that I thought had the potential to be 5 stars. I'm going to talk about whether or not they were 5 stars, and then I'm going to make some predictions for the second quarter. So the first book that I predicted was Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, and I thought that for sure this was going to be a 5-star book because I absolutely love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and that actually made it into my top 10 books last year. And so when I decided I was going to read Piranesi in January, I actually read it on a Patreon recommendation, and there was like 4 patrons that really wanted me to read this book, so I did a spoilery vlog for them. And I can't really describe too much about what the plot is because I feel like it's easily spoiled. It's not a very long book, but essentially you're following this man who is referred to as Piranesi. He knows it's not his real name, but that's what the other person who lives in this house calls him. It's this house with all these halls that just go on forever and ever. There's statues everywhere. There's ocean in some of the floors. There's clouds and sky in some of the floors. So it's like this whole world within this house. And that's really all I'm going to tell you about it. We are getting his journal entries, and it's so incredibly written. I really loved this. I actually love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell more than this one, and I kind of waffled. I'm like, is this truly 5 stars? Because it felt more like 4.5 in comparison to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I just liked the messaging in that one better. I liked that it was sprawling and meandering because it felt very Victorian. I liked the characters more. So this one is so brilliant though. I feel like it's so tightly paced and plotted in comparison to Strange and Norrell. So I don't know. I think I actually gave this like 4.5 stars, but it was my favorite book in January when I read it, and I just adored it. Oh my goodness. I loved it so much. So maybe I should say it's 5 stars. I don't know. It's right up there. Unfortunately, I had a book that I was planning to read in February, and then all my plans for February actually ended up derailing. I ended up revamping every plan I had for February because, as you know, Christy Lewis and I put on the We Love Jenny readathon. And so I ditched a lot of the books I was planning to read in February to read books that were recommended to me by Jenny. And so I did not end up reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which is one of Sanderson's secret projects that he came out with last year. So I don't know. I don't know if this is 5 stars. I've heard really mixed things. I have people who I really closely align with who didn't even finish this book because they didn't like it. And then I have people who really loved it that I know. So I don't know where I'm going to land on this one. I'm tempted to put it on the next quarter just because I really am curious where I'm going to land. And lastly, the last 5-star prediction was the only classic in the bunch, and that was George Eliot's Daniel Deronda. I did recently post a very lengthy vlog on this, which I called the Tome Diaries, because it was me vlogging my whole way through this 700-page book and all my thoughts along the way. And I've actually already taken the tabs out of this because I've copied all the quotes I wanted to copy into my commonplace journal. But I had tabbed the guts out of this book because Eliot's books are so beautifully written. The prose is just incredible. I just love it. She's becoming a favorite author for me, I think. This book throughout, I was thinking like this is going to be for sure a solid 4-star. I had read Middlemarch last year and it was like 4.5 stars. And this one was feeling about the same. There was really a lot of drama with one of the main characters, Gwendolyn, and then the other main character is Daniel, the title character, and his is a much more philosophical and religious exploration, and hers is different. Hers is just straight up drama and consequences for her actions for the most part. So they feel very different, and then they converge on such a meaningful way with Gwendolyn and Daniel's relationship as it develops throughout the book. And by the time we hit the ending made me cry and was so beautiful and absolute perfection that it pushed this book over the top, and it was absolutely 5 stars. One of my favorite books that I've read this quarter. Okay, so let's talk about the books that I think will be 5 stars the next quarter. I actually have plans to read all 3 of these books. So this will be books that I'm planning to read from April through June. I am tempted, maybe I'll put Yumi on there too. I just don't know if I'm going to get to it or not, because I have a lot of plans and a lot of readathons that I'm hosting or co-hosting or participating in already, and I'm not even that far. So if I get to Yumi, we might be able to put that on there. But the first one I wanted to put on here is actually T. Kingfisher's Nettle and Bone. This will be the 3rd T. Kingfisher that I've read, and I read the first one in February. So I've been reading a T. Kingfisher every month. I started with What Moves the Dead, which is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, which is one of my favorite Poes, and I loved it. Oh my gosh, I ate that up. It was absolute perfection. And then I read the sequel, What Moves at Night, in March, and that one was so well written, but it just didn't quite have that specialness that What Moves the Dead did. So Nettle and Bone, I think, also has horror elements, but it's also got some fairy tale retelling elements. So I think that actually will put it up for more success for me, because I love fairy tale retellings, and I loved how T. Kingfisher took and retold something with What Moves the Dead. So I think Nettle and Bone has the huge potential to be another 5-star. I know this is a lot of people's favorite T. Kingfisher, so we'll see whether or not it's one of mine. In May, I am planning to read My Antonia, or My Antonia, depending on who you ask. This is written by Willa Cather. This is book 3 in her Great Plains trilogy. I read book 1 last year, which is O Pioneers, and just loved it. I am currently, at the time of filming this, reading some of her short stories, and some of those I am just loving. Willa Cather has just the most amazing pastoral writing. The way that she can set a scene and give you just a sense of place and really like help you understand characters and know characters in just like sometimes a couple of sentences is absolutely incredible. So this is one that I've been wanting to read for a long time. I bought this shortly after we moved to Kentucky, which was almost 3 years ago, and I had been hearing about it for years before then, before I ever heard of O Pioneers, before I ever looked into any of her other books. So it is high time that I finally read this one. This is usually people's favorite of hers. I think that's why I've heard the most about it. I think more people have read this one and enjoyed this one than a lot of her other works. But like I said, it's part of the Great Plains trilogy, but the only thing with the Great Plains trilogy is that they have the same setting, that they're set in the Great Plains, and I think they might even be set at similar time periods, but there's not a crossover in plot or characters, so you don't have to read them in order. And lastly is another classic, but this one's a Russian classic, and that is Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol. I've had this on my shelf for a couple of years now. My husband bought it for me for Christmas, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. I know that Gogol is so funny, but so far the only thing that I've read by him is one of his short stories, The Overcoat, which I really loved. Dostoevsky's Poor Folk was actually written in response to The Overcoat, and I read Poor Folk for Rating Project Gutenberg last year, and then immediately dived into The Overcoat and actually liked The Overcoat more than I liked Poor Folks. So I am really interested to read Dead Souls. I know that this is about a man who is going around and buying serfs, but the serfs that he's buying have already died. So they have no actual like help or relevance to him, except for that he feels like he can have more societal standing the more souls he owns, the more serfs he owns, but they're all dead. So it's not like he can have this great plot of land with all these serfs working it for him. It's just to help him, I think, rise and climb in society and status and all that. So it's satirical, so I'm sure it's going to be funny, and I'm so looking forward to this. I think I'm going to absolutely love it, which is why it's on my 5-star predictions. Well, those are my 5-star predictions for the second quarter, along with a review of my prediction from the first quarter. This is working so well for me. I used to do like a 5-star predictions TBR for the year, and then I would forget about the books most of the time. So it's going really well for me to kind of look at what my plans are coming up, and then out of those, like, pick some books or pick a book that I really want to read. Sometimes I do that too, like with Yumi. and that one didn't work out, but that's okay. Like usually I will pick books that I know that I'm gonna get to, that I am so excited about and I think will be 5 stars, and it's working so well for me to do it quarterly and to only pick like 3, maybe 4 books, because that's really manageable for me. So I'm really excited about these books. If you've read these books, let me know your thoughts on them. Hopefully you enjoyed them as well, but I always love chatting with you guys in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.